I'm Steven Seltzer. This is the second in a series of conversations with key members of the Think Local community about strengthening our commitment to local business, entrepreneurs, suppliers, and not-for-profit groups. We face a unique threat, not just from the United States, but from other traditional trading partners like China and Mexico. By strengthening our support of our local economy, we can better position ourselves to adapt to the evolving global landscape. But that does not mean cutting off ties with other countries, like we'll talk about. I'm very happy to welcome a strong leader in our vital tourism and hospitality sector, Bill Lewis. Bill is the general manager of the award-winning Magnolia Hotel in downtown Victoria, is first chair of the Downtown Victoria Business Association, and is an associate faculty member at Royal Roads, where he teaches tourism and hospitality management. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
Just before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge the Lekwungen and Wasanic people on whose unceded and traditional territories that we live and work. Bill, it's early spring. The region is a year-round tourist spot, but definitely starting to see the start of travel season. What can we expect over the next few months?
Yeah, so spring break and the March period that we're just in now really took off a little faster than we expected with respect to the early season tourist push. And I think what we're seeing already, and we're seeing trends heading into the summer, is that a lot of Canadians are making travel choices within Canada, which I'm sure has a little to do with the sentiment between us and our neighbors since the election in the States, but also the US dollar. The US dollar, when it's as high as it is, always drives people to make different purchasing decisions. And our economic times are, they're not the smoothest as they've ever been. So I think all things are pointing to, staying home maybe more so this summer. And then it hasn't seemed to stop the US travelers from coming up either, because again, their dollar is very strong. And so we're seeing a lot of business from our neighboring states as well as provinces.
Great. Okay. There are some tourist markets that haven't returned to what they were before COVID even. I remember seeing so many Australian and Japanese tourists. Are we starting to see those people coming back?
Yeah, so we'll see those continue to grow. The thing with the long haul international markets is they take longer to come back because, I mean, there's a lot of complexity to them. There's a lot of, you take a few airplanes to get between here and Asia and here and Australia. And those markets are great for BC, but certainly they're not to where they were before COVID. Unfortunately, I don't think the airline capacity's gotten back there, and it just hasn't reached the levels it was. And in this big scope of tourism as well, they're very important markets to us, but the one to our south is the number one market for Canada. So that's obviously the biggest concern. It outnumbers all of the other international markets considerably. So while we're, obviously welcoming to the entire world, we're also very focused on the one just the south of us.
Right. And focusing on the local businesses and groups here who benefit from tourism. One challenge that our local businesses face is getting the attract travelers when they're here. I know, for example, that local tourism groups and businesses are looking at campaigns to be able to shuttle cruise ship passengers outside of the downtown core, because lots of times they're just in that little pocket, and introduce them to other businesses in other parts of the region. What are a few other suggestions you can provide?
Yeah, I guess across the whole tourism spectrum, there's a lot of different organizations, including, Destination Greater Victoria, 4VI, and others, and the Chamber and the DVBA locally, that are looking to see what they can do to spread tourism more regionally, as well as spread tourism even more equitably across downtown. So I know even with respect to the cruise ship route, there was a lot of lobbying and discussion with the city. And so the cruise ship loop is going back up a little further, not as far as it used to be, but a little further up Government Street, which ideally will spread that customer further and further up so that we see more of that the downtown drops actually get further afield into downtown, particularly up to areas like Lojo, where it's almost exclusively independent local businesses. And that's what we want to see. That's what we heard on the DVBA, is that we saw a lot of challenges from those neighborhoods when the cruise ship passengers were dropped off as far down as the inner harbor, where maybe they're not making their way up to Market Square and Chinatown. And further abroad across the entire CRD, the different tourism organizations and the hotels have been working for years to try and get more exposure on a lot of areas. Some examples would be the Wanakeuka Marine Trail and the Circle Route through Lake Cowichan. Personally, at my hotel and across the market, I've seen a lot more interest in outdoor activities in the last 5-10 years, which certainly the outdoor activities that are even free to guests to use, like hiking, are all out of the region. Like we look at, the stuff on the peninsula, the stuff on the out on that Wanakeuka corridor I just talked about, even places closer by like Elk Lake. And I guess the last one I point out is Destination Greater Victoria has done a lot of work with the Sandwich Peninsula tourism community to build out the capacity and see what they can do to make that a more coordinated effort, because there's so many great local farms out there. You've got the iconic Butchart Gardens, the airport's out there. But there's also so much more, I think, that we could showcase to our tourists. And the key to the different tourism organizations is to figure out how to get them out there and traveling around that region, just to spread that tourism dollar. Because almost all of what I can think about on that Sandwich Peninsula as well is entirely local.
Right. I know one of our member businesses with Think Local, Wilson's, works very hard to be able to provide, access to some of those further away regions through coaches and so on. And I know there's all sorts of there's more tours that can be had because there's so much more to explore.
For sure. Yeah, we got farms and wineries and Sydney by the Sea and Brentwood. I mean, there's just so much out there, and I think it's a benefit to the region to do that. And I guess the last point would be the reason it's a collective effort is, we want to spread the tourism economic impact further around the region as much as possible. And it also increases the total spend, because the more we can talk our customers into and show them things more to do, ideally that will extend their length of stay, which means, you're getting that traveler here for 4 days instead of 2. So you're not, and they're actually seeing more of the region, getting more of an experience that hopefully they go home and showcase all the exciting things they saw, and we keep them here longer and spread the impact.
Absolutely. Is there a concern that some of the anger we're feeling and displaying to our southern neighbors because of the decisions around tariffs and so on will affect our tourist economy? I guess we're not seeing a negative impact from what you said. The American travelers are still coming
Oh,
here, and I
yeah.
assume they're getting a wonderful experience.
We haven't seen a negative impact at all. I mean, that certainly we were all scared of that prospect, but given the political tensions. I think the biggest thing that a number of us have talked about, and it's being worked on in terms of formalizing that message getting out there, is that we've been doing business with our neighbors across the U.S. border for generations, and primarily the ones that visit the most are the ones that are the closest, like Washington State, Oregon, down into California. And I just think we want to put ourselves above obviously there's very, very intense feelings about some of the things out there. But at the same time, the people of all those states that have traveled here for generations, I think we want to remain welcoming, and they've been our friends, and we've got a lot of people have family that spreads the border. And I think it's important to just welcome the ones that want to come up and continue to make this an incredibly welcoming and hospitable place. And, from a tourism standpoint, I haven't seen any negative backlash on US travelers. And in fact, the ones that are coming up here are often, some of them are saying they're doing it because they want to help support us, and they want to show their support in this situation, much like the Canadians are doing the same. So I think, the goodwill of people maybe is rising above in a lot of these cases. And obviously the American dollar strength doesn't hurt. I mean, I think I was quoted by Andrew Duffy last week as saying, Canada's a screaming deal when it's 45% exchange on the dollar, and not so much going the other direction, right?
Yeah, no, good point. Um, Going to your what you do at Royal Roads has the current state of relations with the U.S. impacted your hospitality management lesson plan and messaging at Royal Roads? So there must be students asking questions
Yeah.
and so on.
Day one, I'm in the middle of a course right now, and day one, they were asking about the impact of tariffs. And, really, we just put it through the strategic planning lens, because we look at, economic impacts, political impacts, currency exchange impacts. And so the current situation is very topical, and makes for a lot of great discussion with the students. They're always, they're most keen to learn what's really going on in the world, what's really happening in day-to-day business, and how, what they're learning in the textbook and what they're reading in their readings is how that functions in real life. And so all of those things are discussed, and as much as possible, regardless of, whether it's the situations we're in, but there will be different ones in the past and different ones in the future. We try and bring as much current events and real life experience into those classrooms. And in those cases, like right now, it's for a lot of exciting discussion. And I think we've talked about tariffs, we've talked about currency exchange. Those are probably the two most pressing things from a business perspective that get talked about in the classroom.
Okay. Does all of this mean a reinvestment in local domestic tourism? Or, like, have you had to shift, or have people are just coming and it's just a great situation overall in terms of
No, I
foreign
think
and domestic
I think long term.
travelers? Sorry.
No, sorry. Long term, I think what just reminds us that our Canadian customer has always been our number one customer. And so we do welcome a lot of international travelers to British Columbia and Victoria. But I sat on Tourism Destination Greater Victoria's board for 10 years and was chair for 2, and I've been involved in the Hotel Association for years as well. And the US is always a big market for Canada, there's no question. And supply chain, it does impact a lot that we're doing. And I think that forces a lot of businesses to look at their suppliers and look at where they're sourcing items from. A lot of businesses do it already. Like our primarily our restaurant is almost entirely locally sourced and British Columbia sourced for producers on the food front. And we use dozens and dozens of bistro wineries and almost and exclusively breweries. So we're already working hard at that front, have been for years, and that was about supporting the local economy. That was long before any of this stuff was going on. But I think we also, have to remind ourselves that, like I said at the start, the Canadian customer is our first customer, and the majority of nights that come to Victoria, the majority of travelers that come to Victoria are Canadians. I don't know the exact statistic for the region, but my little hotel, it's something like 60+ % of our customers are from Canada. So yeah, and the next one is this USA, which is about 30%, but it's still 2 times as many customers of mine on an annual basis are domestic, and maybe half that number is coming from the States, and then the rest of the 10% is from other places around the world. And so those are ballpark numbers, but they're not far off from looking at my stats from the last year. So as far as local and as far as, pro-Canadian as well, I think we have to realize that it's already our core market, and it just may be more important in the future than it was before, from a customer and from a supply chain aspect.
And the hotel is a member of Think Local First, and you hosted a mixer for us recently, and you were able to tell us about the original owners of the property being to local business people. Can you just talk about the importance of, being a part of something like Think Local First?
Yeah, so we've been a member for about a year and a half, and we decided when we joined, I knew a little about the organization. I just hadn't joined at that point, and I'd talked to Mary Lou a few times about it, who I think is she the chair currently?
Yes.
Yeah, and she told me a lot about it, and our ownership group and I had talked a lot about just committing ourselves to being more local and being publicly more local, because we've already been doing so much. Like, since we built the courting room in 2017, we've been buying almost exclusively local produce, and we've been using local farms for meat as well, and stretching into the province a bit. But we've tried to be hyper local on that front already, and we decided to join Think Local First because we wanted to tell more of our story on the local ownership of the hotel and being in that second generation. And I guess as a personal point, I feel sometimes there's this assumption that a lot of hotels specifically are big, corporate entities owned by somebody far, far out of Victoria. And in a lot of cases in Victoria, that's just not true. We have a lot of locally owned hotels in Victoria. I know the Chateau Victoria and Magnolia are the only 2 Think Local First members. But by and large, if you look at the properties in Victoria, many of them are locally owned, and then even more of those are British Columbia owned. So I think it's important that we get that message out there. And we thought, we would do that ourselves first, and join Think Local First and try and be more actively involved publicly, because I think a lot of the strength in our local economy is to support the local businesses that we love to frequent, and just make a nicer downtown, make a nicer city. And the best way to do that is to support local business.
Yeah, it really is a partnership of us doing what we can to support our members to, ensure that not just that you can survive and thrive, but like you said, that you're ordering from other local suppliers and so on. It really is, well, it's good all around.
Yeah, yeah. Keeps the money in Victoria, keeps it growing, keeps the profits from diverting away from our city, and then that way they're more likely to get reinvested back in the city, helping it grow and supporting jobs in
Awesome.
the economy, right? Which is
Oh, for
totally,
sure.
yeah. I also think that helping those local businesses thrive and keeping our local economy healthy and diversified is really strong. It's not just about tourism, it's about the whole economic spectrum. And the more diverse our economy is, the stronger it can weather through economic highs and lows.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, Bill. Really appreciate your time. So glad to have you as part of understanding local to let people, better understand what it means to support our businesses, our not-for-profits, our community. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome to be involved in it, and we're looking forward to continuing and being heavily involved in the organization.
Wonderful. Thank you.